Hello, everyone. We're with Stephanie von Behr. Welcome.
Welcome, Stephanie.
Thanks.
So, Stephanie is the HD and founder of Founderland. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Founderland and actually how we even connected.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me on the pod. Yeah, I am co-founder, one of three of Founderland, and managing director. And we met because I was part of Accelerate Health, which was a mental health leadership program for impact leaders in Berlin, but it was for impact leaders across Europe. And Peter, you were my coach. So really great to be here and talk about some learnings I had not only with you, but that kind of it was a perfect timing for me to have revelations over the holidays and sort of, work them into my life now in 2024.
Great. Well, it was a privilege to be your coach. So, thank you for being so open to, the learning and change and all of that. But before we get into some of those insights, I'm curious for our listeners to know a little bit more about Founderland as a company and also something that's quite new, which is called PAM, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So Founderland is the fastest growing community for women of color founders. Um, my two co-founders, Alina and Deborah, met back in 2019. And as they are both women of color, they felt that they were very underrepresented in the tech ecosystem and wanted to create a community for women who looked like them and faced the challenges that they face. Women of color founders receive less than 0.5% of venture capital, and that hasn't changed year over year. It's actually got less in the last year because of the economic downturn. And so Founderland is really focused on two main pillars, which is we have great events and we have an accelerator program. So we do a lot of stuff around education, investor readiness, confidence building, networking. And so we're really we did a lot of different things in the first 2 years. Now that we're moving into our third year as a nonprofit organization, we are trying to, get a little bit more laser focused on these two core pillars. And Pam. So Pam is our pitch AI mentor. And this is a product that came out of our desire to scale Compass. Compass is our investor readiness accelerator. And what was always kind of disturbing or upsetting for us was that we couldn't accept every single founder into the program because it is a very hands-on program and we only have 16 spots each year. And so we wanted to scale that. And how do you scale such a hands-on program where there's so much human capital going through the program, including mentors and workshop leaders and one-on-one pitch training. And we came to the revelation that actually we can scale pitching because AI has gotten so exponentially better in the last year that we developed a tool using ChatGPT's API. So it is really like a prompt framework that we've trained to help the founders get better at pitching. It analyzes not only their slideware, but also their speaking. So the way that they pitch, so the words and the tonality and the speed. So now we're in beta and people can sign up on our website, founderland.org.
Okay.
Pam.
Then it's actually a great name. But we'll put it on the show notes so everybody who's listening can quickly get to it.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
if you're curious, you can sign up. Yeah.
I think I'm going to do that.
I think everyone can use help pitching. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really challenging, and that's kind of why we came to it, because most of the women who go through our accelerator program, they've actually never even met an investor before, because unless you are running a circle with very wealthy people or a certain type of person, why would you know investors? I mean, I didn't know any investors until I got into this business. So to actually pitch to an investor and know the psychology behind what they're looking for, it's something that you just need to train, just like anything else.
And I would imagine, especially women raised in a patriarchal way, have more this angst or discomfort talking to people that they may feel are, I don't know, higher up in a society, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm using right words, but I do know that I had in the past, if I'm going to talk to my boss, it had to be prepared, and I wasn't feeling comfortable, and I didn't feel equal with them. And I think that was the issue. So this can probably help with that.
100%. It's such a power imbalance. I mean, here you are. I remember my first pitch for Wonder House back in 2014. I remember shaking, my jaw just shaking, being so nervous. I could feel my lip quivering when we had our first meetings with investors. I mean, here you are, you want your business to succeed so much, and this person can be that solution for you. They can give you the money. So it's not only the patriarchal structure, but it's a financial power imbalance, and also women are just not trained from all sorts of different cues from the culture to ask for money or to ask
Mm.
for anything in that way. So even the women in the first sessions of Compass in our program, we set up the prompt. Okay, you're meeting. We do a lot of role play. You're meeting with an investor. They've already reviewed your deck. Now it's the third meeting, and you're here to ask for the money. And it's always on that first try. They kind of beat around the bush to ask for the money. They don't ask for it directly, even though we've set it up for them. We've teed it up. They're now in a role play safe situation. So imagine when there's really a lot of there's something on the line for them. So yeah, it is something you need to train and get good at, just like everything else.
Yeah, and get comfortable really in these situations, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Does this remind you of somebody, Peter? Me?
I think we all could get
We had
better at
loads of
pitching. I mean, yeah, we've had lots of conversations around it. I mean, we made a podcast episode, I think, right at the end of the year. We haven't even put it out yet, about the fear of public speaking, and exactly what you're pointing at,
Mm.
Stephanie, that, there's so many factors that can get in the way. But really, the only thing
Mhm.
that can kind of level the playing field is just to have a go. And if there's something out there, i.e., Pam, that can help you level the playing field, so to speak, let's be honest, it's not going to be level for now, at least in the short term.
No.
But if it gives you at least a little notch up or a boost, or, increases your confidence not to feel like such an imposter, then I'm all for it. That's such a great thing to give
Yeah.
to that community, because it's so hard to ask for something, especially money. It's hard enough to ask for help,
Especially when you
let
need
alone
it.
money. If you and maybe
Exactly.
that's a good segue into, you being a founder. Let's maybe explore your experience being a founder, and what it takes, the level of support you need, what kind of help
Mhm.
is, makes sense, and
What are the challenges?
yeah, what are
Maybe.
the challenges?
Yeah. So I think I'll piggyback on the imposter syndrome. I think for me, it was really tough because I moved to Germany in 2013, and my career was in a completely different sector. So I had worked in startups as an employee back in New York, but I never imagined myself as a founder. It was not on my radar at all. But when I moved to Germany, coming from the art world, I actually thought I would continue in that way, but because I didn't speak German, I had to learn really fast that, yeah, I needed to pivot. So I started a company called Wonder House with my co-founder Shirley, basically solving the pain points for moms. So as a mom in a foreign country and not speaking the language, I wanted to connect with other women. So I think that being a founder for me was really about solving a pain point for other moms, and that was a really kind of interesting experience because I learned everything that there is to know about being a founder just by doing it. So meeting with investors, sort of, as I said before, being very nervous, failing in many ways in those meetings and not being the person who asked for money. And, breaking up with my co-founder, not, having to leave the business because we were just not aligned as co-founder partners. She's an amazing person, but it just wasn't the right fit. Learning that, and after 2.5 years saying no, I had to tap into something that I didn't even know was there. So I remember coming home and just being really upset, and my husband saying, "What is going on with you? You're not here. You're not with us. Like, where are you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not happy in this relationship. I don't think I can continue." And he's like, "So don't." He said it so matter-of-factly, "Just so don't." So blasé. And I was like, "What do you mean? I just spent 2.5 years building this. I can't not do it." And he was like, "Sure you can. Like, I'm sure she would understand if you said your heart's not in it or you don't feel good about it anymore." And I sat with that for a couple of weeks, and then it felt right. It felt good to think about leaving, and then I made the exit. And I think this is just to say that being a founder is really tough, and, you you can very easily get lost in the idea of wanting to finish something because you wanna finish it, even if it's not right. And another one of the founders in my community had a really similar story to me, and even though they got funding, she just didn't feel, like, intuitively that it was the right partnership for a lot of different reasons, and she left, and she feels like a weight has been lifted from her shoulders, but you feel this pain of, no one's gonna ever wanna co-found something with me, no one's gonna it's just like getting
Mhm.
divorced. No one's gonna ever wanna marry me again, and I've been through that too. So, it was a similar feeling to that.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. Nobody. I mean, Peter and I work a lot about on relationships, helping people improve and deepen their relationships. So, is it co-founders? Is it leadership team in a company? So, is it a startup or a bigger company, more established? It's the same thing, and it's interesting that really rarely people think that these are relationships like your personal relationships that you need to work on, build, deepen. You need to basically employ all the skills that you have with your very close family, your spouse, your kids, in order to get better at it, to function better, to grow as a company as well. But it's not so. Um, it's not so common sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. So in that first relationship, we didn't have a coach, and now we do. So me, Deborah, and Alina, we have a coach since day one. That was one of the gifts of getting this funding from Google. They also gave us a coach for the last 2 years. Shout out to Yenny Young, our coach. So we worked with her for 2 years, and it was a once a month engagement, 2 to 3 hours. And this was the safe space for us to come and talk about anything and everything that was going on with us. And there were if I look back, there were some really hard moments for us where I think all three of us were just like, I can't do this anymore. Maybe we didn't say that out loud, but the vibe in the room was that. And now we're so close, and it's been such a journey, and it's so beautiful. We actually all three just came back from Marrakesh to celebrate Deb's 40th birthday, and it's just I just wanna say to any founders out there who are struggling, work on it. It can get so much better if everyone is really committed to making it better. If they're not, then I would say move right on. But if you're 3 truly committed to being in a relationship together, a long-term one, then get a coach and work it out.
Yeah, I love what you said there because it doesn't have to be shit, right? When someone says that you need to work at it, it can be beautiful as well. Yeah, there will be moments, as you say, when you feel vulnerable, when you feel angry, sad, paranoid, whatever. But when you've got someone to work with and discuss that as a group and flesh that stuff out and get into dissent, because let's be honest, it's okay to disagree. And yeah, you do feel resentment sometimes, anger towards your co-founder, whatever. It's totally natural. And if you let that fester, I mean, we talked about this before, right? If you let it fester, then that ends up being something that it should never have got to. It can be something innocuous where you felt like you were ignored, or, something wasn't done, a piece of work wasn't done as good as to your high standards, or whatever it is. But just being able to work it out as a group, it's worth all of that time and investment, because when we say work at it, it's a natural thing. Mia and I have to work at our relationship outside of us running a company. And as founders ourselves, we have to work on that. And we also have coaches ourselves, because sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees. And it's good to get an outside perspective and also just get over yourself, get over your own ego, right?
I love that you said get over yourself, because for me, what was so freeing was realizing how much control I had to change the situation. And what I mean by that is whether when I could look inward and I gave myself that space because I was able to reflect with you and I was able to reflect with Yenny, I was able to see that a lot of these things were actually repetitive things that happen in other relationships for me, whether it's my need for perfectionism, which is something I'm really trying to get away from, because nobody is served by perfectionism. It's like that high standard for myself is of course being pushed onto every single person around me, and no one can live up to that, including myself. So um, I think that that space that I gave myself and that I'm trying to give myself, and that self compassion and kindness, then trickles down to everyone around me. And it creates a spaciousness that is warm and kind, and those little things are much more easy to seep into that space and not go into me. So it's kind of like I've created a bubble around myself, and it's in my control to keep that bubble. And how I keep that bubble around me and that safe space, that spaciousness, is through journaling, working out, spending time with my children without my phone near me, doing the things that I need to do to make sure that I'm mentally fit. And yeah, and just knowing that I at any time can bring that control back is such a gift. And of course, I'm coming from I'm on a high now. Peter, you've seen me in the low, and maybe it would be good to talk a bit about that, of how I got here. Um, so back before the new year, I was having some feelings about one of my co-founders. And those feelings were around me not feeling like I was being seen, not like I wasn't being getting enough gratitude or praise. Praise is the word. And actually, when I look into it, it's this need for praise that I've always wanted to get from the external, but I can give myself that praise. Um, that praise doesn't need to come from anyone else. Actually, when I can give myself that praise, I don't need it. I don't need those awards. I don't need my co-founders to give me praise. I don't need my team to give me praise. It's nice. I'll take it. Please. I'm not going to say no to it, but I can give it to myself. And I think that that was a game changer for me. And you helped me see that. So
You're very
thank you.
welcome. Do you think boundaries plays a massive part in that? Because I know we explored this, so I'm guessing that over time, in your team, especially in Founderland, you've had to set some professional and personal boundaries that's probably served you well, because obviously to be able to do all of that safe bubble activity, you need to kind of carve out that time for you, right?
That's so true. So boundaries are a tricky one because they're changing often, and I like to leave room for them to change, because relationships develop, and sometimes you need to set boundaries with someone and then pull them back. So I'm trying to see them as more fluid. But yes, the boundaries, um, I in particular, in this one case, it was me checking into myself and feeling uncomfortable about something, and it stayed with me, so it didn't go into that bubble space. It just stayed with me and it hurt me, and I was like, "I'm actually hurt right now." And so this hurt isn't gonna go away. It doesn't seem to be leaving when I do all the things that I can do, all my in my toolbox. So I'm gonna actually talk to this person, and that was my boundary. It was, now I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna say how this made me feel, even though I was so scared. And what ended up happening with this person was an hour and a half conversation, crying, on my part, which was me being vulnerable. And then a beautiful thing happened, which is that we reached a new level of our relationship that we talked about after. We were like, wow, we really, for Founderland to work, our relationship needs to be held at the highest regard, and we cannot let anything get in the way of that. And yeah, I'm just excited for how much further the relationship will go now that we've broken down, or we've set boundaries with each other and then become vulnerable with each other, so we know where those boundaries are and how we can also penetrate them in a way that feels safe for us both. And I think, with my team, it's also one of those things where boundaries for me are often around communication. So I have to do a lot of communication with my team because we're remote, and or we're mainly remote. So it's about saying, here's how I like to be communicated with. Here's what doesn't work for me. I have kids. So getting a million voice messages on WhatsApp doesn't work, because actually, if at night I'm putting them to bed or they're in the bath, I can quickly look at my emails on my phone, but I can't really listen to something. So setting boundaries like that with colleagues, or letting them know that, would really like them to manage up in a way, and defining what that means. That means, um, at the end of the week, letting me know kind of what they've achieved, what they had challenges with, so I can support them in the best way. And then I also say, like, does that work for you? So it's not just me setting this this tone and making it be that they have to do it, but leaving room for them to do it how they want to do it. So it's about creativity. We talked a little bit about this before. How can you allow people to be creative? And I have my hands up in finger quotes, air quotes. So for those of you who can't see me, because this is a podcast, creativity can be anything. And for me, it's really letting the people in my organization be who they are. So
Mm.
everyone has different boundaries, and I need to respect those. And if there's a point where our boundaries conflict each other, then we have to talk about it, because we need to work through that.
Just a quick thought on what you said about boundaries. People that are able to set boundaries, like what you did, and communicate them. Obviously, you can't just have them and not communicate them. Doesn't work that way. Are also appreciative of other people's boundaries. I've noticed that people who are not setting boundaries are not appreciative of other people's boundaries, and that really creates mess in any relationship. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it.
Oh, Mira, I love that. I would love to say one more thing about that. Um, I think it's you, Peter, who said this to me actually, and I'm just holding on to it and sharing it with everyone. When someone treats you in a certain way that you don't like, it's not always, and not to put the blame on the victim, and again, air quotes, and but you allow people to treat you in a certain way. So if your boundaries aren't firm, or if someone treats you in a way that doesn't feel good, it's most likely because you haven't set clear boundaries with that person. How do you hold yourself? How do you move through the world? Um, so I see that as also a really important way, that I like to lead. I like to lead by example. So when you know what to expect from me, I'm very dependable. When I send for every meeting that I lead, there will be an agenda. That's for sure. Why? Because I want people to come to the meeting prepared, and so that we don't waste time. Because I respect my time, and I respect the people who I work with time. Work with time. Of course, I'm not infallible. Sometimes I make mistakes, but for the most part, on the majority, what you get from me is consistent. And that's a boundary that I've set for myself.
Yeah, and I think that's a gift to your team. And just listening to you both, tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds like setting boundaries can also be a collaborative effort, because I love what you said about your team. This is my boundary, but let's see how the team experiences this. Let's see how they handle it. Let's see if it gets in the way. And let's be honest, it's about changing your boundaries quite often. And that might sound like a lot of work, but there's no like, oh, you must change it on this day. It's just something changes, you have a discussion, you collaborate with your team, and then it makes sense when you're in clarity to put a different boundary in place. Or, you're having a one-to-one with one of your team and you're like, actually, this boundary isn't working. How is it for you? And then you can adjust. And that's all there is to it. I know it sounds really simplistic saying it out loud, but it's really just a back and forth, a collaboration between your team. And it will constantly ebb and flow. It will change, right?
Yeah, while you were saying that, I was thinking about it's really like a dance. It's a
Yeah.
conversation, and it's changing and growing, and sometimes it's like above the line and below the line. Sometimes it's in a really good place, and sometimes it's below the line and it's just completely empty for whatever reason. There could be all sorts of things going on that are outside of work. And yeah, I think that this collaborative aspect is super important for me because I would never want to be tyrannical and say, this is how I expect things to be. You need to show up like this. Like, that's just not me. And I would never want someone to talk to me that way. So I try to be as collaborative as possible with my team so that they can bring their whole selves to work. I know that's like a really cheesy thing to say because it's maybe it's cringe as we talked about before. It's cringe for the Gen Zers. But I really truly believe that people should be able to be themselves at work. I mean, how wrong is it if we have to close off all of the fun parts of ourselves and all of the quirky parts just to fit into some mold? That's not doing anyone any good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because, I mean, trying to be someone else, it just depletes so much more energy and it's totally not yourself. So when you just talking about it out loud, it doesn't make sense, right? Because if you can be yourself, therefore you're safe, you're the best version of you, and I'd hazard to guess it's more likely that people will resonate with that authenticity rather than something that's not something's off. We've all experienced maybe someone in a team before or had a boss before, and it's not that they're horrible, it's just that they're trying to be something that they're not. And it's kind of pushing you away, if that makes sense. It's not connecting you on a human level.
I was just thinking about something that Brené Brown said in I think one of her first TED talk when she was talking about vulnerability, that you cannot, people like to not feel their emotions, especially the ones that are not comfortable. And so we push them away, we disconnect from them, but uh, you cannot push away one emotion and not the other one. It's not selective. You either do it or you don't. And so same with, pushing away a part of yourself that you don't want to be seen at work. In the same way, with that part of yourself is connected your creativity, your joy, you wanting to be in that space. Everything is connected with that. Your ability to be productive. And so when you are pushing away a part of yourself, you're pushing away everything that is good as well. And so it's really interesting how productivity and ability to connect and collaborate is connected with all of us, not just part of us. Cannot be selective.
So true. I recently I made a commitment to myself for this year to get more into my art background, and that could mean a lot of different things, but for this month, so it's a commitment to once a month doing something, and this month I worked with, a f a new friend of mine. His name is Jörg Reinbeck. I met him through the Responsible Leaders Network, and we had a chat about my background in the arts, and he's a coach, but he works with art, and I took a group of Founderland members to the Neue National Gallery, and we did his, technique of staring at a piece of artwork and asking it a question, and this is just to say that is I brought my full self, and I created an experience based on me being like, "No, I wanna do more of this," even though it's not exactly what I'm doing with Founderland. I combined it, and it was an amazing experience, and everyone who came to the event was really touched and felt that it was super meaningful for them. And so it reminded me that when I do these things, also another event that we did back in January of last year, I curated the event. So how we kind of talked about certain topics with the groups at the dinner. Um, it was also a huge success, and I realized that this gift I have for bringing people together, connecting them in creative ways, is something that I can't just let sleep and lay dormant. It's something that the world needs. So I need to do more of it. And these are the things that would be really sad if I didn't bring. And other things like me, being really silly and making everyone laugh a lot. Because I'm just ridiculous, but, I can't quiet that down. That would be a different version of me that push people away, as Peter said, because they would feel a resistance and an ickiness around me that isn't
Yeah, I
natural.
love that, and it's trying to push down something that's naturally part of your existence, which is art and creativity. And to be fair, I've not met a human yet that isn't creative. They might swear blind that they've got no creative fiber or whatever, and then just spending enough time with them, I see that they're deeply creative beings, right? And it's same for
Mhm.
me, I've got an art
Totally.
background, I'm a musician as well, and I spent many years in the corporate world pushing it down, trying to be corporate Pete. And
Mm.
luckily for me, my team members back then, some of my direct reports, although it was deeply uncomfortable, were like, yeah, corporate Pete's kind of shit. you know, we don't really like this, Peter. We love you. So, we want to give you this feedback to support you. And it really rocked me because I'm like, wow, what have I been doing? What is this sub-level version that I've been bringing into work? And I literally felt uncomfortable talking about music, being a musician and creativity. And as soon as I
Mm.
slowly but surely, sheepishly brought that back into the way I show up as a leader, it was so much easier, on everything from
Mm.
how I connected, the communication, it was just more fluid. And I couldn't believe, a couple of weeks, couple of months in, I was like, why did I even try to be something that I wasn't? But then I see this quite often. Many people we work with have that problem where, they start with a new team, they enter a new company culture, and suddenly the leadership team want them to shave a bit out of themselves, and then
Mm.
suddenly they show up and it's not working. Their impact is less, if that makes sense.
I would imagine that the leadership team themselves isn't comfortable being
Yeah.
themselves, because this is how actually what my thoughts on culture creation is, that it does come from leadership team. They influence culture because people look at them.
Yeah, when we talk about culture, I mean, you're dead right, Mira. Quite often, if the founding team, if the leadership team isn't comfortable in their own skin to start with, then imagine what the company culture is like. You cannot really be safe and show up. Psychological safety is going to be quite low, and people aren't really able to be themselves. And, maybe that's a good segue into diversity, right? Diversity is just allowing everyone, as you said earlier in the conversation, Stephanie, to be themselves. And what a wonderful gift. If you can show up and be yourself, I guess people are more likely for it to make sense to be themselves around you because they feel safe and they can see you. If you talk about role models, right, that's being a positive role model. The more that you can just be comfortable being you, that's a lovely
Yeah.
trait as a leader, right?
I mean, think about what motivates you and what demotivates you. I had a experience with a boss in the past who was so demotivating because, he would just not connect with me. Like, for example, when I was trying to make coffee one day, he was sitting, like, I don't know, a couple meters behind me, and the coffee machine wasn't working, and I was like, "Hey, does anyone know how to use the coffee machine?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's on the Notion page." And I was like, "Really? This person cannot get up and show me, like, the humanity is gone." So that it's like it chips away at you, these people who just don't connect with you and don't make you feel seen, and, um, and that is not great leadership, right? So what we have tried to do at Founderland, we obviously have a very, um, diverse team. Well, it's not that diverse because 'cause we're all women, but, we, and our community is extremely diverse, and we need to also be aware that a lot of the women in our community are facing challenges that mean that when they're in typically white spaces, which is venture capital, the startup world, they have to code switch. They need to not be themselves because they don't feel like they fit in. As women, we don't feel like we fit in in most cases in the startup world because there's
Mm. Yeah.
only 2% of venture capital funding goes to women. So what we see, what is visible is white men getting all of the venture capital. So how do we
Mm.
deal with that? We create a lot of visibility for the founders in our community. We try to, um, yeah, talk about the founders, get their faces seen, because I think that it's also this confirmation bias. If we continue to only see the same guys getting funding, then it's like our brains are wired to make shortcuts, and the shortcut is bias. And so we're hoping that what we're doing
Mhm.
is having some impact on people's subconscious and conscious. And when these investors get in the room and they see that there's a benchmark for other women founders, other women of color founders, other LGBTQ founders that have gotten funding, then something happens in their brain to rewire it to say that this is actually a fundable person. It's sad that that's kind of a strategy that we need to take on, but we're trying to attack the problem in
Mm.
a lot of
Yeah.
different ways because there's no one way to tackle this. It's systemic. And yeah, I think that when we come together as a community, there's so much power in it that I know that we're doing the right thing, and we're on the right path. We haven't seen the numerical results yet, so the data hasn't changed, but something is changing.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It I guess it takes time to be able to see the other stuff, but it's if people feel more comfortable, it will inevitably change.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a conversation with another guest yesterday, Kristen Anderson. She's the CEO of European Women on Boards, and
Mm,
we're happy to say that since we last spoke, which was over a year ago, the
2 years
data,
now, I think.
2 years, yeah, the data has changed. It's definitely improving, and
mm,
I love what you said that, there's not one, that it's not as simple as sticking a plaster over something. That you have to attack this on many fronts. And yes, it's sad to say that still, in this day and age, there's only 2% of women getting proper funding. And as you say, women of color of different minority background, it's not even a percentage. It's even 0 point something, right?
mhm,
So, we have to do everything we can for visibility and to get people more comfortable seeing that diversity everywhere.
mhm.
Because, unfortunately, people look like me, white bearded males, and, that's just the way it is. But yeah, I mean, in our work, we see it changing for sure, but there's still a lot of work to do. So, we can't get complacent. And, that's why you're doing the wonderful job that you're doing with Founderland, and why things will change eventually. But yeah, when we talk about systemic change, it does take a while. And
Yeah.
it can easily look like we should all just sit on our hands and give up because it will never change. But
Mm,
at least in our work, I don't see that. We should carry on because things are shifting, or at least
yeah.
that's from my perspective, at least. Yeah.
Mm.
I think a nice way to close this out is to, because I see we're getting to time, is really to talk about how, there's so many terrible things going on in the world
Hmm.
right now, and you can get really, really depressed reading the news, thinking about how things aren't changing. But the commitment I made to myself this year is to not get so engaged with the news, but really focus inward so that the people around me, my small circle, and the people that I care about, and my team, my family, and my friends, they can have the ripple effect, and that ripple effect can move out because you can start to feel really helpless. And they're really the TikTok and social media can make you feel like you're actually taking action by commenting or taking a stand in one way or another. But actually, you're really just helping advertisers and doing something with the algorithm that makes, negativity more, um,
Mm.
move the algorithm towards negativity. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't take a stand if that's how they feel, but I think that the best thing you can do is be kind to yourself,
Mm.
the people that you care about, and make a commitment to your community in a more local way. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love what you're saying then, because small changes do ripple outward. And going back to earlier in our conversation, it's about working on yourself first. I mean, we've seen this in all the work that we
100%.
do. We've seen this for ourselves, Mira and I. Maybe Mira can talk about this a bit more, but when we get our own house in order and
Yep.
we're, being a beacon, we're being a good role model for our family, for our partners, for our community, that's when I see really tangible things happening. Because people get curious, they're like, what's changed in you? Why are you happy when I've just watched the news for an hour? And I'm like, well, now you're curious. I don't watch the news. That's my secret. However, I know what's going on because everyone tells you anyway. And what about looking at more positive things? I've got some things coming into my email box that's more positive. They're telling me the small incremental changes that are happening versus me watching one of the major news channels. And it's just simple things like that. And then we end up having a conversation about positive things in the climate space, and rather than, oh, we should all give up because we're going to be dead in 10 years.
I think it affects our
Yes.
decision making a lot. We didn't touch on it, but there is this, we were talking about it before, it's this, quietness space in which we can make better decisions and not react, but more be proactive. It's happening when we are not in space of anxiety, when we are not in a space of fear. And in fear, nobody really does make good decisions. So it is really choosing to do this and knowing why. And why is to actually contribute and make better decisions and actually take care of people around us.
Oh, I love that. This spaciousness and this not being in the fear and anxiety. I have suffered myself from panic attacks and anxiety, and I haven't had one in, I think, 2 years. But it's crippling to be in that space. So if we can find a way to, yeah, be in the more proactive, spacious, abundant space rather than this restrictive fear, closed, then we have a much better chance of making better decisions. And I'm going to leave you with one quote because I love this quote from Pema Chodron. Um, when the resistance is gone, the demons are gone. And I think it's such a nice quote to leave with, because we we can feel it in our body when we're resisting something. And when we lean into that and we check in, what is the resistance? And we can then we can release it. Then we can move with the flow. Go with the flow, baby.
Oh, that's a great way to end.
Brilliant.
Thank you. And it saves me asking, any parting wisdom. There you go, right there.
Oh my gosh. Great.
Well, this has been a
Perfect.
great conversation. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, Mira. Thank you for all the
you're
gifts you're
welcome.
giving the world with your wisdom as well. And
Thank
we'll
you.
be in touch soon, yeah?
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.